were getting across, the river, and it was flooded, and they stepped in there with their foot, and it just parted, like the Red Sea, with Moses, and they walked across on dry ground. That's where we are, and they're on that side of the river and everything. Can you name your favorite commercial, past or present? Your favorite commercial that you've seen on TV, past or present, and why? You hate all of them. It's the American system working. This is Trump all the way, Capitalism.
That's right.
I like the one, the progressive, where the guy is teaching these others that are coming up, growing up, how not to become their parents. Have you ever seen those? I like those, and he's telling the woman, she's over there. There's nobody where they are, and there's a ticket holder up here. You take a ticket like the motor vehicle used to do, and he's telling her, "Don't take a ticket. There's nobody." Well, I got to take a ticket, and she. I just like that. I think it's good. Y'all know any? Y'all don't watch TV? Get Gordon and get it done.
That one is funny.
Hey, we're dancing. We're sorry. Come on in. Come on in. Glad to have you. This is Senior Adults 11 is who we are. We're glad to have y'all. We heard you were coming.
This is Brett and Erin Tooley. They're our prospective next-gen couple to do family ministry, youth, children, all the things. They brought the whole family. They have 4 boys, teenagers, and one going to college that are over in the youth room.
Did she still sing?
She does sing. I heard her tell Greg that last night. So we got a lot of choir members in here. Yeah, we might have a prospect. Yeah. So, all right, we just want to say hi.
Well, we're glad you came. Glad you came.
Try to say hi to everybody.
Do what now?
We're going to say hi to everybody.
Oh, okay. You got a long way to make it.
She homeschooled 4 boys. Well,
Homeschooled it?
Going to college.
Man, they must have a big whip or something over at their house. Oh, Back to our commercials. Our commercials. Well, like Progressive Insurance. I like the commercial, but I don't use the product. I got State Farm. I've had State Farm ever since I was a baby, I guess. And that's what I've always used is State Farm. It's always been the cheaper one in the long run. Get Gordon. I don't use Gordon because I hadn't killed anybody or wrecked anybody. Edward may need him down there after being in a wreck, and everything. But I don't use the
I guess it's all state where he said he's mayhem.
Yeah. His latest one, he's hanging up in a tree over a roof, and he's the limb, and he falls down on it. He said, "I just love this." He's got dirt all over him and everything like that. Even if people find an ad catchy or funny, they likely will not use that product unless it meets a need. That's something to think about. You see the commercials and all these drug commercials and everything they have on TV. Unless you get a benefit out of it, if you've got psoriatic arthritis, or something like that, and they're advertising a new drug, you tell your doctor about it. What about that drug they're advertising? That's what they're trying to do, to get you to ask your doctor, about it. Again, it is what it is. On page 37 of your study guide, Winning Strategy, God gave his people victory when they trusted and obeyed him. That's the key part. They trusted and obeyed him. It says parents of toddlers want to teach their children to trust them. They've got an illustration of that there. Building this trust involves providing for their needs and protecting them. Some parents build trust by encouraging their child to leap into the arms when the jump appears to be a very long, dangerous leap to the child. It says when the child makes the jump and the parent catches him, both the parent and the child are exuberant. God often calls upon his children, that's us, to make what appears to be enormous leaps to demonstrate to them that they can always trust in him and that they can obey Him. Have you ever been called on by God to make a tremendous leap? What did it look like? Maybe you started a new business. Maybe you moved to somewhere far away. How did it work out? Did it work out exactly like you thought it would do? Or did God have to work through the circumstances? Maybe things weren't exactly like you thought they'd be. Maybe you were disappointed. Maybe you were overjoyed. Everything went smoothly. House sold, new one sold, kind of like what Edward's doing with his, selling a house and buying or getting into another one and everything like that worked smoothly. Maybe it's of God and something like that. Those are things that we need to think about, and that's what we're looking at with the children of Israel and what they're going through. If you looked in your Bibles on page, not page, but chapter 5, they don't even cover it in our lesson, but I was going to go back to it because there's some things in there to look at. 4 events took place in chapter 5. If you looked at them, they're very evident what went on in verse 1 through 9 in that. I'm going to read a few of those verses. And it came to pass when all the kings of the Amorites, which were on the side of Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites, which were by the sea, that's on the other side of the Jordan where they are now, heard that the Lord had dried up the waters of Jordan from before the children of Israel until we were passed over, that their heart melted, neither was there spirit in them any more because of the children of Israel. God did that for them. They couldn't do it. God did that when they heard about the river parting and them coming over and what happened to them. And again, NIV, I had put it down and it may read a little bit better. Now all the people that came over were circumcised. This is what happens next. All these people that were in the desert, and of course this is the rite that God instituted with Abraham and the Abrahamic covenant, and this is the thing that hadn't been done while they were in the desert. And they're getting ready to go in and approach Jericho. This had to be done. But all the people that were born in the wilderness, by the way, as they came forth out of Egypt, them had not been circumcised. Secondly, in verse 10, we see the celebration of the Passover. They hadn't been keeping the Passover. God instituted that with them. It was very important for the Jewish nation because when they came up out of Egypt, remember, that was Passover that night when they slayed the lamb and put the blood over the doorpost and everything. They had been keeping the Passover, the celebration out in the desert that was going on. It says, it was on the evening of the 14th day of the month while camped in Gilgal on the plains of Jericho, the Israelites celebrated the Passover. This was something that happened in chapter 5. Thirdly, in verses 11 and 12, the manna stops and the people eat of the old corn and the produce of the land. Up until this time, 40 years out in the desert, they had been eating maybe the animals they raised, if they had sheep, whatever, goats like that. But this manna was their main sustenance. And they didn't get scurvy. You know, if you eat the same thing, that was a big thing with sailors, in the early 16th, 17th, like that. They would eat the same thing and be out to sea and they would get the scurvy. And these people for 40 years didn't. It says even the soles of their shoes didn't wear out. You ever had a pair of shoes that didn't wear out? Can you imagine your shoes, lasting 40 years? Had to be out of style. But again, this is what happened to them. It says, but that year they ate the produce of Canaan. It says, finally, in verses 13 to 15, we see a pre-incarnate, I can't even read my own writing, pre-incarnate appearance of Jesus. Well, that's a pretty big deal, isn't it? I think I would have included that in a Sunday school lesson, but again, they chose other things. It says, now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. And that's important that he had a drawn sword. This is Joshua, and he's out maybe up early, and he's standing on maybe on the side of a mountain, whatever, and he sees this fellow down there with a drawn sword. Well, Joshua was the commander. You didn't draw your sword unless he told you to. We're going to see him do that later when they encircle Jericho 7 times and the walls come tumbling down, as the song said. So he approached this person and asked him, are you for us? Or are you against us? He said, are you for us or for our enemies? And then this person said, neither, he replied, but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, what message does my Lord have for this servant? The commander of the Lord's army replied, take off your sandals, for you're standing on holy ground. Who else did he tell to do that? You remember? Moses told Moses at the burning bush, he said, take off your shoes. Notice that he didn't reject Joshua's falling down and worshiping him too. And only Jesus, God, pre-incarnate, would do that. Only he could. If it was an angel, he'd tell him, get up. We see that, numerous examples of that. People try to worship angels and they tell them, look, I'm just your brother, I'm a created being, like you are. Don't worship me. But here, this person accepts the worship. That's what was going on. Gets us through chapter 5 there, and of course our lesson is over in chapter 6, what we're looking at today. This winning strategy. Have you ever received a command that didn't make sense at the moment? Maybe your wife told you to do something and you wondered, well, why is she telling me to do that? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I know some of you men have received that. It happens. It happens. Sure does. We look at these verses here, though, instructions obeyed. I saw when we went to Branson to the baseball tournament when I was out that Sunday, 2 different places. Well, she wanted to go in one of these craft shops where they got all kind of I call it slob art. It's because it's all over the place, Then we went in a restaurant, and I can give a good recommendation too. If you're ever going through Sheridan, Arkansas, stop at the Ladybug Cafe. It's downtown. You won't be disappointed. It was worth the trip, just that. But anyway, what was the commands that she gave and everything? Reading these verses here. Joshua got up early the next morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, marching before the ark of the Lord and blowing the trumpets. So as the armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of the Lord while the trumpets kept sounding. So on the second day, they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. They did this for 6 days. What's important about the number 7? Because they're going to do this 7 times. The 7th day, they're going to do it 7 times. You ever find numbers coming up in your life? Could anything like that be of God? We find the number 7, number 3 in the Bible. And again, God's trying to give us a message. He's instructing us. We see this going on. The 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 disciples, number 12. Do you think numbers are involved? God created numbers. He created knowledge. There's something there, of the universe. I think it ties in with his whole plan and of everything that's going on. We don't know all the facts of it. That's a problem with it. We can't see clearly because it's like looking through a dark glass. We can see something over there, but we can't tell the detail. God, in a lot of ways, is like that. We believe in God through Jesus Christ, yet none of us have probably ever seen God. He said, you can't look on my face and still live. None of us have probably met Jesus like Paul did on the Damascus Road And he spoke to him, gave him his instructions, what he wanted to do. Yet we know God is here. His creation is all around us. We see the benefits that we've received by being his children. Yet, again, the fact that all parties involved followed God's instructions. Joshua got up early the next morning, and he had been told to get up early, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord. They had been told. What if you were a priest and you say, I got to carry this heavy thing again? We just got across the river. Notice they didn't complain. They obeyed. The 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets went forward, and they're out in front of the Ark of the Covenant. They didn't question that. Can you imagine? We're going to find out how far it is around Jericho in a little bit, but you're blowing a trumpet the whole time. Have any of you ever blown a trumpet? Have you ever been a musician? I know Billy plays the guitar. Yeah. Took a while to learn to do that, didn't it? If you're going to be a trumpet player and you're going to be good at it, it's going to take you some practicing and learning to do it and everything. But walking around this city, notice they obeyed and they did what they were told to do, marching before the ark of the Lord and blowing the trumpets. And then it said the armed men went ahead of them, and the rear guard followed the ark of the Lord while the trumpets kept sounding. They had been told to do this, told how close they could get to the ark, and everybody did what they were told to do. So on the second day, they marched around the city once and returned to the camp. What about obedience in your life? I know we've gone over this and talked about it, but this is what God wants us to do. That's the reason we're in Sunday school and we come to church, because we're wanting to be obedient. I think everybody in here wants to be obedient to God. Well, why aren't we, though? What's keeping us from all being obedient to God? Well, this human flesh that we're encased in. We see and we lust after things, maybe a new car, a new pair of shoes, whatever, like that. And that gets our eyes off God, doesn't it? Maybe God tells us, you don't need that new car. You drive the old one, you take that money and you give it to the missionaries or the people down in Venezuela. I don't know if any of y'all have seen those pictures on TV. It's pitiful. They are bringing babies out from under the rubble and everything still alive, and there's people still buried underneath all that rubble. But again, I'm just supposing, of all things there. Being obedient, though. God was preparing his people to enter the promised land with this test. And it was a test. Were they going to do what he told them to do? Because they got a track record like us. We don't always obey. God knows that. He's watching us. He knows ourselves better than we know our own selves. He sees our heart and the intents of our heart. He knows what you're thinking. And again, he sent his son so that you wouldn't have to suffer the judgment of what, your actions, I guess, and your thoughts and things like that. That's what I'm trying to get around to. But as they enter the promise, the seventh day offered a different kind of test that they're going to. The second part is victory assured. Victory assured. Archaeologists have discovered the ruins of Jericho. I don't know if any of you ever read about that, but it's important. The walls didn't fall. They crumbled in place. You see those buildings down in Venezuela, a lot of them pancaked on top of each other. Some of them actually fell over, though. The foundation was taken out and they fell over. Jericho, one of the oldest cities in the world, they fell down. They found the foundations where these stones were put on and everything like that. So, again, and the walls collapsed upon itself, not falling over. They had measured the diameter of the city, and it was a half mile in diameter, which would make for a 3 1/2 mile trip around this city. That's how far these priests with the trumpets and the Ark of the Covenant walked each day. Then on the seventh day, they did, 20-something miles, around it. The author that I was reading on this said it'd probably take them about an hour and a half to get around it on the one revolution per day. So they got up, did this, came back to the camp. But on that seventh day, they're going to do it 7 times. It says on this in verse 15, on the seventh day, they got up at daybreak and marched around the city 7 times in the same manner, except that on that day, they circled the city 7 times. Verse 16, the 7th time around, when the priest sounded the trumpet blast, Joshua commanded the army, quote, shout, for the Lord has given you the city. The city and all that is in it are to be devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute and all who are with her in her house shall be spared, because she hid the spies we sent. Then in verse 18, but keep away from the devoted things, so that you will not bring about your own destruction by taking any of them. You remember, if you read the scripture in this, what were the devoted things? The gold, the silver, the bronze. Those were the devoted things. Everybody else was going to be destroyed. Everything else was going to be destroyed, because they eventually burned the whole place, what was left of wood and everything like that. They killed every person, every man, every woman, every child, every baby, every goat, every horse. Whatever it was, they destroyed it all. But God had told them to do this. Why do you think that is? A lot of people have a problem nowadays with a God that would execute people. We see that. We're going to see it again here coming up our next lesson, Achan and what he did. Do you have a problem with that? I don't. My God is a holy God. He created everything that is. He has the power and the knowledge and the wisdom to take care of it. And his word, is his word. It says, otherwise you will make the camp of Israel liable to destruction and bring trouble on it. It says, all the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron are sacred to the Lord and must go into his treasury. Why did God set the treasuries of Jericho, or treasures of Jericho, apart from himself? What's his planning in this? What reason? That's a question that's asked on page 42 of the NIV, if you have that copy of the study guide. Why did God set the treasures of Jericho apart for himself? Any ideas? What do you do? Really, it's a big test. They're going through a test. Do you tithe? Or do you give? You may go over the tithe, giving beyond the tithe. Do you give? Why do you give? We were told to. Well, your wife told you to. God told us to. It's in his word. The first tenth of everything is his. The Israelites, when they had a crop come in, they had 10 bushels of corn. They took one and, that was 10. Is that right? Or they gave a tenth, of it. They could keep the 9, trade the 9, whatever, but that one, it had to go to, we find later, the temple there, and the priests were fed with it and other things like that. But have you ever thought about the fact that everything you possess is actually God's? Your name may be on the title, but you don't own it. You may think you do, but anything that the tax collector can come and say you owe us tax and you can't pay it, so we're going to take it away, it's not yours even on an earthly plane, but on a heavenly plane. God created everything that there is. And again, it is what it is. And this is the reason the test, as Cindy said, that they're going through. Will you do it? He commands us to give a tithe. I'll give you a tithe. Do it. What did he say he would do if you did what he asked you to do? He said he would bless you. He would prosper you. He would keep you in good health. Might not be the health you expect, but he'll keep you until your dying day, and he knows that, what day that you'll die. I mean, you got to approach it from the aspect, this God, he knows everything. He's in control of everything that's going on. This was an offering of first fruits, and God had ownership of all things. And again, talking about the fact that we don't actually own anything. Rahab's rescuing the demands of not taking anything to themselves. What about this Rahab? Do you know any of her history? She's called a prostitute here. A woman of the evening, It's supposed that maybe there was a tavern in her home which was built into one of the walls of Jericho. And it was a place where local people, traders, caravans came through. They came there. We find the spies, the story of that, where they went there and she protected them. She had heard what God had done at the Red Sea, how he had parted it, and the children of Israel had gone through and escaped, from the Egyptians, and the Egyptians had been, destroyed. And back then, just as now, it doesn't travel as fast then, but now we know what's going on all around the world, just like these two earthquakes that they had down in Venezuela. I mean, instantly, the floods that they had over Mississippi, Alabama, up north too. We find out, in a matter of minutes, it's broadcast to us. Those people back then didn't travel as fast, but they knew what was going on. Caravans and others, officials from governments, went to different other governments like that, had relationships. News was shared. And she believed. Why would she believe? Being a prostitute, a woman of the evening, only interested in making money off of her body like this. Her morals were probably not the best in the world, wouldn't you think? But yet, she had faith in what God was going to do. She told the spies about, the fact our hearts have dropped. We don't have any desire, to oppose God. The men are scared. Women are scared. Everyone in Jericho, because they had the gates all closed up. They said that those walls, what I read in the account, they were about 25 foot tall, and they were 20 feet thick. You imagine all of that mortar and stones and everything, mud bricks, whatever it was, falling and, coming down at one time. Rahab believed, though, and because of that, her faith, we find that she's included. She was the great-grandmother of King David. That's what I said, grandmother of David. Why would God choose somebody like that, though? Couldn't he come up with somebody better than her? Go ahead.
No one would ever expect. A common person. He never chose the big, mighty, funny people. He took care of people that he knew he could help.
You remember when David was called, they had already gone through all the other sons, and he says, "If you got any more sons?" "Yeah, I got one. He's out there. He's a cute boy, but he's keeping the sheep and goats, and we'll get him. We can't do anything until he gets here," and that's the one he chose. Could he choose you? Are you common enough that God could choose you? Are your intents of your heart, whatever they are, I'm not judging you one way or the other, but whatever is on your heart, your thoughts, your speech, could he choose you? Even though you're not perfect, he could choose any of us. He can do whatever he wants to do. He can move, mountains to do what he wants to do. We see the weather that's going on around us now, this super El Nino. Well, where did it come from? Well, they say the oceans on the far Pacific are heating up a lot more than they normally do, and that's what's causing the rain and the problems that they have, especially north of us, moisture coming across and things like that. Who's in charge of that? And God is. Ultimately, He's in charge of all that. I know Satan is the prince and the power of this world, but he can't do anything God doesn't allow him to do. So we see that going on. But again, victory is assured here. Rahab, she was rescued, and all those that were with her, because she tied that red twine string, whatever it was, out her window, and they knew where she lived and where all those people were. Finally, here it talks about the walls being destroyed in this. Our memory verse is in verse 20 here, the first verse of this. Says, when the trumpet sounded, the army shouted, again, they're obeying, and at the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. So everyone charged straight in, and they took the city. They devoted the city to the Lord and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. Everything was destroyed. We see here the total destruction of everything and everyone except Rahab and her family. Why did he do that? Weren't there anybody in there even halfway moral?
He didn't be involved family people and not his people.
Right. Bill had some friends maybe when you were growing up that were questionable. Maybe your parents didn't really, want you hanging around with that person. Maybe you had children, grandchildren, and they have some friends, and maybe they're over at your house, and you see some activities, some words, some thoughts, and stuff like that, and you said, you don't really need to hang around them. Also, he'd given them 40 years while they were wandering out there in the desert, and then prior to that, ever how long Jericho had been there, and again, they say archaeologists do, it's one of the oldest cities in the world, so I don't know how long it's been there, but God gave them all this time to come to our knowledge and belief in Him, but they didn't do it. I take from that too, I infer from that God had sent them opportunity. People had witnessed to them, kind of like we're sending out missionaries all over the world. I don't know if you read your open windows and praying for the missionaries in there, but there are people all over the world. Some of them, you can't even call their name because of the situation where they are in countries, like this. But again, he had done this because he didn't want them intermingling with them, which they later did anyway. And he wanted to bring them in as a pure people. It says the people obeyed God completely even when it didn't make sense. Well, what was the part about making sense? You're going to kill this goat, you're going to kill this donkey, this camel, why? We could use that. We can eat it. We can use it for, grinding grain or whatever, pulling, a plow or something like that. But he said, no, you kill it. You destroy it. He could because he's God. He could give them those instructions. God did the work as the Israelites watched him fight their battle. The question comes, our author of this, what potential victory is God asking you to trust Him to provide? That's on page 39. What potential victory is God asking you to trust Him to provide? Maybe there's some opportunities in your life, just like this Belize trip. Maybe God's spoken to you. Maybe you feel an inkling of a desire to go to Belize and be a part of that. Could it be God is wanting to use you for something like that? Promises kept. In verse 22, Joshua said to the two men who had spied out the land, go into the prostitute's house and bring her out, and all who belong to her in accordance with your oath to her. Who better to go in and find her in all this than the two men that had stayed there? They knew what she looked like, probably her mother and daddy and brothers and sisters too. Verse 23, so the young man who had done the spying went in and brought out Rahab, her father and mother, her brothers, sisters, and all who belonged to her. And sound like a pretty good crowd, I don't know how many brothers and sisters there were, though. They brought out her entire family and put them in a place outside the camp of Israel. Well, why did they do that? Because they weren't of the Israelite blood. Is set apart. God's chosen people. We find later Rahab, she had professed this faith, and they're learning what it takes to be a child of God and how God is going to, they needed to know some truths. Verse 24, then they burned the whole city and everything in it, but they put the silver and gold and the articles of bronze and iron into the treasury of the Lord's house. But Joshua spared Rahab the prostitute with her family and all who belonged to her, because she hid the men Joshua had sent as spies to Jericho. And she lives among the Israelites. Whoever was writing this, she's alive today. So evidently they stayed with the Jewish people. And if you ever have a question, Jews is what you call those people. That's the formal name. They're Israelites, but they're Jews. You can say Jews because they're Jews. We see it all today in the animosity and the hatred for Jews and what they went through in the recent history of the world. But these people are God's chosen people. Some people will argue with that. People will say, no, that's just a thought that somebody had. But you see it throughout history. He's protected them. He's guided them. He's kept them. 1948, he put them back in the country. This may not be the nation. They may leave that country. But one day, God will establish them as a nation. And again, Jesus is coming back. We see all of that happening. Finally, applying the lesson. We should obey God's directions even when they don't make sense. Again, I go back to my question. Have you ever obeyed maybe a command or something that didn't make sense? I know when I first started working, my first job, I was 14 years old, worked in a service station. And back then, we washed windshields, we checked your radiator, your oil, everything like that. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was told to do that. And I obeyed. It finally came to the point, and of course things were changing, but came to the point where I kept the service station open on Sunday. Of course, they didn't do any maintenance or anything, and most of the businesses back then were closed, but people had to have gas. And he had me come and trusted me enough to come in, give me a key to open up and to keep the money and everything like that. But I was obedient, is what I'm trying to say in this. It's very important, our obedience, and that we carry out what we say we're going to do. We experience victory in life when we obey God completely. Well, how can we know that we're obeying God completely? Maybe we think we are, and then something bad happens, and we say, well, what's up, God? What did I not, get the mark? There's something on my part? And of course, most of the time it's something he wants us to learn, and that's what he has to do, is put us through that crucible to learn it, things that happen in our lives. We can trust God to do what only he can do. We serve an awesome God, as the young people say. Created everything that you can see as far as you can see. Created you and everything that goes on in you. Keeps you. I mean, again, we don't appreciate God, and I know I don't, like I should. We can live in victory by trusting in God's promises. Well, to know God's promises, you got to read his word. That's the book. That's his word that he's given us. He's preserved those 66 books over all these millennia, thousands of years, and we have it available to us. And that's how we know what to obey and what to do. We can go to it. We don't have to wonder. Maybe God's not speaking to you audibly, but he is speaking through his word. Any other thoughts? before we dismiss? Well, I appreciate you coming today. Bow with me and we'll be dismissed. Father, again, we'll just humbly come to you knowing that you look upon us each day and you are that awesome God that knows not only the intents of our hearts, but you know the hands that we wield, our feet, where we go, what we do. And we know that you have a plan for each of our lives. And firstly, it's to obey you, to study and to read your word, to seek you in prayer. Father, I humbly ask that you would bless these people today that are here. Bless those that are not here for whatever reason. Maybe there's sickness. Maybe there's hurt in their lives. Father, they've been offended by somebody at church. We just pray, Lord, that you would watch over them, keep them, use all of us for your glory. For we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Bolanos.